WeChat, Dan, is a key reason people even buy phones in China. If it's not in Apple's App Store or Google's Play Store, what does that mean for these companies?
Yeah, I mean, look, this is a slippery slope. I think it's unprecedented, choppy waters. And I think right now it comes down not just to WeChat, and you look at ByteDance, huge shot across the bow. And I think it's really a gut punch to those companies when you look at the global expansion plans. And this is something where I think over the coming weeks and months, there's going to be more chapters to this book.
So talk to us about chapter one, TikTok here, where the president, in the last week and a half or so has taken aim at this company, said it's going to be banned unless it's bought by a U.S. company. Microsoft now in negotiations to buy part of TikTok, maybe even all of TikTok. We don't know for sure. What's your take on the likelihood of a deal getting done here?
I think 75 to 80%, that could be conservative. From Microsoft, and Nadella essentially fell in their lap. I mean, Christmas morning came early in terms of this asset, and they're the only ones in town that could buy. If you think about FANG names, they're up to their eyeballs in regulatory swirls. And you look at Microsoft, this would be a major consumer foray in terms of social media. And I think 40 billion, 3 years from now, I think it's worth 200 billion. So I think that there's a high likelihood of this getting done. For ByteDance, backs against the wall. Because if it's not Microsoft, then ultimately that's a dark chapter to go down.
75 to 80% is a pretty high likelihood in a very controversial environment. The president has set a deadline here. This needs to be done in the next 45 or so days. Do you really think they can do a deal that quickly?
Well, I think the technology issues and, of course, the security issues in terms of the lines of code, cross-pollination between U.S. and China, that's going to be take some time to actually get worked out. From a deal perspective, I think 35 to 40 billion for U.S. assets, as well as Canada and New Zealand and Australia. And for Microsoft, they want to get this deal done. Investors want to see them get it done. And ultimately, I think for Facebook and Zuckerberg, it's really a nightmare scenario when Microsoft gets the TikTok assets. And you look at ByteDance, it's a game of high-stakes poker. And if they walk away from this, September 15th comes, and that's a code red situation.
What does it mean for other companies like Apple, like Google, that have huge businesses in China and have actually for years been working on building those bridges with China?
Well, especially Apple in terms of, that's the hearts and lungs of Cupertino in terms of Foxconn, iPhone, really production. I continue to believe bark's worse than a bite in terms of retaliation. I don't see that. And I think what you're seeing in terms of investor perspective, they view that as contained risk for Apple, for semi names, for other tech players, although that will be a risk going forward. But it does come down right now. So I think that's something investors view as a contained risk for those companies, especially Apple going to iPhone 12. Remember, they are one of the biggest employers in China when you think about iPhone at peak.
Now, realistically, Dan, how do you expect this to play out? I mean, we don't really understand how much teeth the president's urgings will have here. Of course, there is this executive order, but does he really have the power to do this? Will the companies really respond? We're only, now less than 3 months away from an election. How does this actually unfold?
Yeah, in my opinion, I think before Labor Day, we potentially get a deal in principle, Microsoft, TikTok. I think behind the scenes, they're obviously working closely with the White House. I think Nadella's relationship with Trump definitely doesn't hurt things in terms of this. And I think they obviously have to give everything the green light. But I think when you go down that path, I think a deal in principle is reached before September 15th. ByteDance, obviously not an ideal scenario. It's really for them, a bit of a nightmare, but it comes down to, would you rather get 40 billion, or if they pull the plug September 15th, valuation go to 10 to 15 billion. And that's the key.
And do you anticipate that Tim Cook would just roll over and do this after all of the time that he's invested in building that China business?
Look, and in terms of Cook and China, that continues to be where they've bet their core competency in terms of iPhone production. I do not see that changing. And that's really been our thesis throughout the trade wars over the last year and a half. And remember, so many times Apple is the poster child of the U.S.-China cold tech war will sell off, and that's an opportunity because I view this as something where Apple continues to have a moat and to some extent something where I do not see retaliation against Apple. And remember, you go back a year and a half ago, there's, they're burning iPhones in the streets. Instead, they're actually going into Apple stores and buying iPhones. So I continue to think there's a little bit of misperception there. But obviously, this Microsoft TikTok has a lot of wide-ranging ramifications across the tech space.